We often hear about the crisis in Venezuela, the hyperinflation, the political turmoil, the mass exodus of its people. It's a story that has dominated headlines for years. But there's a chapter to this story that's often overlooked, a ripple effect that extends far beyond Venezuela's borders and into the turquoise waters of the Caribbean. Today, we're diving into the untold story of how Venezuela's collapse is reshaping the economies of its Caribbean neighbors. For decades, Venezuela was not just a neighbor, it was a regional powerhouse, a generous benefactor. Through the Petrocaribe Agreement, launched in 2005 by then-President Hugo Chavez, Venezuela supplied oil to many Caribbean nations on incredibly favorable terms. Countries could buy oil at market value, but only needed to pay a small portion up front. The rest could be paid off over 25 years at an interest rate of just 1%. For small island nations with limited resources and high energy costs, this was a lifeline. It allowed governments to free up funds for social programs, infrastructure, and education. It stabilized energy prices and fueled economic growth. Countries like Jamaica, the Dominican Republic, and Grenada benefited immensely. The deal was simple: cheap energy in exchange for political loyalty, and in some cases, goods like rice or bananas. For a while, it seemed like a perfect symbiotic relationship. But what happens when the lifeline is suddenly cut? As Venezuela's oil production plummeted and its own economy spiraled into chaos, the Petrocaribe program ground to a halt. The shipments of subsidized oil slowed to a trickle and then stopped altogether. For the Caribbean nations that had become dependent on this cheap energy, the impact was immediate and severe. Suddenly, these countries were forced to buy oil on the open market at much higher prices. This sent electricity bills soaring for both households and businesses. Governments that had been using the savings from Petrocaribe to fund their budgets now faced massive fiscal gaps. In some cases, the debt owed to Venezuela under the program still lingered, creating a complex financial burden even after the benefits disappeared. Take Jamaica, for example. The country was one of the biggest beneficiaries of Petrocaribe. When the program collapsed, the Jamaican government had to quickly pivot, seeking alternative energy sources and grappling with the sudden increase in energy expenditure. This shockwave was felt across the entire economy, from transportation costs to the price of goods on supermarket shelves. Beyond the loss of cheap oil, the collapse of Venezuela's economy also meant the loss of a significant trading partner. Before the crisis, Venezuela was a major market for goods from countries like Trinidad and Tobago, which exported manufactured products and food. As Venezuela's purchasing power evaporated, so did this vital export revenue for its neighbors. Factories in Trinidad that once produced goods for the Venezuelan market had to downsize or shut down, leading to job losses. But the story doesn't end with economics. The crisis has also triggered one of the largest migration flows in the history of the Western Hemisphere. Millions of Venezuelans have fled their homeland, seeking refuge and opportunity in neighboring countries. And while Colombia and Brazil have received the largest numbers, Caribbean nations like Trinidad and Tobago, Curacao, and Aruba have also seen a massive influx of Venezuelan migrants. These islands, with their small populations and limited resources, were not prepared for such a sudden arrival of people. The influx has placed immense strain on social services, healthcare, and housing. In Trinidad and Tobago, which is just a short boat ride from the Venezuelan coast, the issue has become a major political and social challenge. While many Trinidadians have shown immense compassion, the sheer scale of the migration has led to tensions and debates over immigration policy. The migration also has a darker side. The desperation of those fleeing has been exploited by human trafficking networks. Dangerous boat journeys across the narrow strait separating Venezuela from Trinidad have ended in tragedy, with many lives lost at sea. It's a humanitarian crisis unfolding right on the doorstep of these island nations. However, the story is not just one of loss and struggle. It's also a story of resilience and adaptation. The end of Petrocaribe, while painful, has forced many Caribbean nations to accelerate their transition toward renewable energy. Countries like Barbados and St. Vincent and the Grenadines are now investing heavily in solar, wind, and geothermal power. The crisis served as a wake-up call, highlighting the dangers of relying too heavily on a single volatile partner. This push for energy independence could be one of the most significant long-term consequences of Venezuela's collapse for the region. By diversifying their energy sources, these nations are not only protecting themselves from future price shocks, but also taking important steps to combat climate change, an existential threat for low-lying island states. Furthermore, the crisis has prompted a reevaluation of regional alliances. With Venezuela's influence diminished, other players have stepped in. The Caribbean is once again becoming an arena of geopolitical interest, with countries like China and the United States vying for influence. Caribbean leaders are navigating this new landscape, seeking partnerships that can offer sustainable development rather than short-term relief based on a single commodity. The collapse of a nation as large and influential as Venezuela was never going to happen in a vacuum. Its shockwaves have fundamentally altered the economic, social, and political fabric of the Caribbean. The era of cheap oil is over, replaced by the urgent need for energy independence and economic diversification. The humanitarian crisis has tested the compassion and capacity of small island nations, forcing them to confront complex issues of migration and integration. What we're witnessing is a painful but necessary recalibration. The Caribbean is learning a hard lesson about the perils of dependency and the importance of building resilient, self-sufficient economies. The road ahead is challenging, but it is also one that holds the promise of a more sustainable and independent future for the entire region. The untold story of Venezuela's impact on the Caribbean is a reminder that in our interconnected world, one nation's crisis is often a shared challenge for all its neighbors. Thanks for watching. If you found this story insightful, please give this video a like and subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into the global issues that shape our world. See you next time.